Good morning, everyone. Good morning, sir. This is our report in EGS Chapter 17 entitled Masculinity. What is masculinity? Masculinity. Social expectations of being a man. The term masculinity refers to the roles, behaviors, and attributes that are considered appropriate for boys and men in a given society. Masculinity is constructed and defined socially, historically, and politically, rather than being biologically driven. The beginning of masculinity. More traditional models of the household have the men working solely outside of their homes, making them absent during a child's early years. This scenario leaves young boys with no male model to learn from boys, and then later young men learn masculinity from what they see on media and interactions in their schools. The lack of empathy of men may be rooted in the fact that they are actually socialized to be unlike women who must have empathy to raise children. What makes a man a man? In this book, Kimmel identifies four rules of American masculinity in the 1970s as described by psychologist Robert Brannon. Number 1. No sissy stuff. Masculinity is based on the relentless repudiation of the feminine. Masculinity is never being a sissy. 2. A big wheel. We measure masculinity by the size of your paycheck. Wealth, power, and status are all markers of masculinity. As a US bumper sticker put it, he who has the most toys when he dies wins. 3. Be a sturdy oak. What makes a man is that he is reliable in a crisis, and what makes him reliable in a crisis is that he resembles an inanimate object, a rock, a pillar, a tree. 4. Give him hell. Exude, exude an aura of daring and aggression. Take risks, live life on the edge, go for it. While these factors may have changed, some remain true until today but in different forms. Joseph Vandello and Jennifer Bosson, two psychologists who study manhood, added that there are various forms of masculinities, although at a given time only one masculinity dominates the gender hierarchy above all feminities and other masculinities. This is known as the hegemonic masculinity. It explains why some men who act a certain way feel as though they can dominate both men and women. An aversion to the feminine. Masculinity as homophobia. Masculinity, through its dissociation with women and femininity, may have become a form of homophobia. Homophobia is not the fear itself of gay men, but the fear of that a man can and will become gay or feminine. Kimmel sees homophobia as the cause of sexism, racism, and heterosexism, as it is an aversion to becoming the other or the non-dominant masculinity. In this extreme self-masculinity, then is the desire to be not woman, which has become fragile due to the changing gender society. Masculinity as power. The ever-pervading fear of losing one's masculinity may be tied to the fear of losing power. Masculinity is about power. A masculine man is a powerful man who controls various resources. When the masculinity of a man is challenged, he loses power unless he defends himself. It is challenged when a man is associated with the feminine or perhaps when he is seen defending women or members of the LGBT. While making sexist, homophobic, or racist statements, I often part and parcel of heterosexual masculinity. Silence and consent to these put-downs result in gender-based violence and oppressive structures thriving in a society. Men and fragile masculinities. Masculinity is fragile because it can be easily lost as discussed in the previous section. One may state that these issues are imaginary and that men are privileged enough to overcome their issues, given the power granted to them by the society. However, this is not always the case as shown by the Gender Role Conflict Scale, GRCS. The GRCS describes the amount of psychological conflict, anxiety, tension, and gender negative emotions surrounding the male gender role. 397. It states that having one's masculinity challenged causes the greatest stress in most of men, and that those with high levels of this type of anxiety are less likely to seek counseling. Is Philippines a masculine country? The Philippines scores 64 on this dimension and is thus a masculine society. In masculine countries, people live in order to work. Managers are expected to be decisive and assertive. The emphasis is on equity, competition, and performance, and conflicts are resolved by fighting them out. Masculinity has many faces because its definition continues to change. The Filipino masculinity is changing due to the migration and globalization. Filipinos in general are becoming more westernized since the advent of colonization and the creation of modern society, Philippine society. Men were made to be dominant, tough, and oriented toward building camaraderie among themselves. Thank you. That's all.